but Tennessee, Kentucky, the biggest, I think. So let's start there, guys. This is a weird game to get a handle on. Blayne, I thought you said it said it best pre-podcast about these are just two teams that are very hard to prepare for.
Well, it's hard for each one to prepare for the other one because they're literally diametrically opposed to what each other did. Like it's totally opposite. You can't simulate the pace that Tennessee plays with. Tennessee because of what they do, you know, the scout team, everybody looking at cards are like, is that a fullback? Like what is that? That Kentucky has, like trying to figure out, you know, these different formations, so many tight ends on the field, all this kind of stuff. So both teams, it's hard to simulate what each other does. It's hard for Tennessee to make themselves go that slow in preparation because Kentucky's one of the slowest teams in the country in their operation of their offense. So I just think it's totally fascinating. And Heupel even brought it up in his press conference. He goes, just the total contrast of styles it fascinates him. So I think it's going to be interesting.
Yeah, I mean, we talked about it, guys. I mean, it's I think we kind of said it's a weird game because I think on the surface you feel like Tennessee should just do what Tennessee's been doing to a lot of other teams. You know, and they're going to be able to score. I still think they're going to be able to score, but it is one where there are some things about Kentucky that you can look at and certainly feel like, okay, this could be maybe more interesting than people will think. But again, as the high man on Tennessee all season long, I've just kept saying about their offense. I just think it's so hard to see anyone stop them, and maybe Kentucky winds up being that team. But to this point, we just seen it. They have just over and over. They are a well-oiled machine at this point, and again, if they get Cedric Tillman back, that one could be even more of a big boost. So.
I agree that Tennessee is unbelievable on offense. I'm not gonna say they're not, but I will tell you this. This is going to be, and I know people are going to say, well, what about Alabama? This is going to be the best secondary the best secondary that Tennessee has faced in Kentucky. Why do I say that? Eli Ricks didn't play for Alabama in that game. They had a freshman starting at corner in Terry Arnold, who they just basically put man to man and let him get burnt to a crisp in the first half. And then then they started stacking the receivers in the second half and matching them up on the safety. And I think that you're going to see Kentucky play differently. Alabama goes a lot of that matchup zone. It goes a lot of the straight man, coverage. I think Kentucky mixes their looks a lot better. And you give Mark Stoops, a defensive head coach, Chris, 2 weeks to prepare. I would have to think they're going to come out at least better prepared than before. And you look at the experience factor in that Kentucky secondary. They have a transfer senior in Kedron Smith, who's played a lot of SEC ball. They have Carrington Ballantyne, that's been there forever. Tyrell Ajon, who's a graduate as well. So I think that you're going to see a good test for this Tennessee team, if nothing else, in this Kentucky secondary.
Well, just quickly before you chime in, Chris, by the way, we did not forget about Cedric Tillman. We've mentioned him. I've mentioned him multiple times, both in our preview and just about 3 minutes ago. So, kind of talked about if he comes back, that obviously gives Tennessee. We've talked about that a lot, quite frankly, in terms of where they are. If they get him back, and but again, Blayne is talking about the Kentucky secondary, but we have not forgotten about Cedric Tillman. If there's anyone that's talked about Cedric Tillman, I think I've probably said his name 15 times in the past 5 weeks. So
Kentucky also gets back Tavion Robinson as well, though. On the other side, they get a receiver back, and they're starting right tackle. So I just think off the bye week, I'm not saying let me say this for Tennessee fans: I picked Tennessee to win the game, but I think Kentucky will cover the spread. Is all I'm saying. I think whether that's a backdoor cover or whatever, I think they keep it within 13 points.
Okay, this idea just came to me as we're doing this. When's the last time anybody shut Hendon Hooker down throwing the football? Has it even happened since he's been at Tennessee? I mean, I'm looking through the game logs. I mean, yeah, he was 17 of 27 for 239 against LSU, which is not an eye-popping stat line, but we all know the reason. Tennessee led basically from the opening kickoff of that game. And so that was a game flow thing. I mean, he's 14 of 18 at 298 versus Akron. That was a blowout. I mean, I'm trying to remember, has Hendon Hooker had a bad game throwing the ball since he's been Tennessee's quarterback?
Chris, you're trying to put the ultimate jinx on this man.
I mean, who knows? Tennessee's trying to put the jinx on themselves. They're changing up the uniforms. They're doing all kinds of craziness. Like, you know, the traditionalist in me says, just keep the same uniforms on and just go play.
The look they had against UT Martin was so classic.
Yeah.
I like the black ones even less than I like the gray ones. I thought what they just wore was just about perfect. I don't know why you mess with that, but
that orange color, I mean, it's crisp. It pops. It looks good. This black is a different deal that they're going to go with over here. Who knows what Kentucky's pretty exotic that they have the different, chrome colored helmets, all that kind of stuff too. So who knows what they're going to be wearing. But I just think let's like I said, Tennessee is more than likely going to win this game. But what you have to look at is everybody's out here saying that, Tennessee, it's not even going to be close, stuff like that. I think just because of the limited number of possessions, a very well-coached Mark Stoops defense, an experienced secondary, and then the other element is let's kind of look at the rushing game for Kentucky since Chris Rodriguez has been back. The productivity has been going up and up. And Kentucky faced a very good Mississippi State defense who Chris Rodriguez ran for 197 yards on. The next week, Mississippi State goes to Tuscaloosa and holds Alabama to 29 yards rushing total on the night. And that's with Jahmyr Gibbs over there. I think people need to give the Kentucky run game, as it's gotten a little bit better since Chris Rodriguez come back only in the Ole Miss game, a little bit more credit. Here's the thing. Tennessee's been a lead against the run, so something's going to have to give. If Kentucky can get any semblance of a run game going early, extend drives, stuff like that, that's their only chance to do this. Where also, too, you got to mention that Tennessee's defense that gives up 330 yards passing per game, on defense. It's abysmal, the numbers, but they don't let people get into the end zone. So Kentucky has to finish drives if they're going to stay in the game. I think Tennessee wins, but I wouldn't be surprised if Kentucky ends up covering maybe late, something like that. But there's going to be elements of this game. I don't think it's just going to be a blowout from start to finish. I think there'll be some back and forth in here, Chris.
Yeah, I was looking for a stat that I couldn't find, but we'll get to that later. Blake, anything, I know you look at covers a lot. Anything stand out to you on this game? Because I'm sure there's some pretty crazy stuff.
Yeah, I mean, we mentioned these. No, I was going to say, I mean, we mentioned these in our preview video, but if you're one of the 16,000 people who have not watched that yet, then something you can kind of note here, we talked about, is the road team is 6-1 against the spread in the last 7 games between these two. So we've kind of seen that ping pong back and forth. Of course, they play, opposite every year. I mean, one team goes the other way, but it's like, the road team has had a lot of success in terms of keeping it against the spread. So that's kind of an interesting betting trend if you're looking at it from that standpoint. I mean, here's the thing, too. We talked about a bit. Like, Tennessee's hitting the over, as you would imagine, a lot. Kentucky's games have been on the under in all but one game this season. So 6 of their 7, the number's gone under. So, we're not always looking at this necessarily from a betting standpoint, but if you're looking at terms of how the games play out and what the trends are, that is something that is of note when you talk about these two teams. Something I want to bring up, though, is what Chris has brought up in previous videos this season. It seems like every game Kentucky plays is close. And I think, Chris, that can be a good thing. That can be a bad thing, because I think against some of the other competition, we can obviously look at a Youngstown State and those kind of games, but, even the ones I think you were bringing up, Chris, long ago, like the Northern Illinois games and ones like that, it just seems like they're always right there, either with a chance to win or, they lost a couple of those close games and won at Ole Miss. And obviously the South Carolina game was a little bit different because Levis wasn't in there. But, it's so I just think that's why, to me, Kentucky is just a hard team to figure out. Right. So,
well, I want to bring this up. It'll be an overlay right here. Let's look at this real quick. Cole Kubelik, throw this out there. Vols, Tennessee has scored 30+ plus points in 10 straight games, longest streak in program history. Kentucky has allowed 24 or fewer points in 11 straight games. So something's gonna give this weekend. So I think that's why I'm really intrigued by this matchup.
You know, the thing is, and I've said Kentucky's nickname ought to be the Whirlpool because they bring everything to the middle and everything's close. But the stat I was looking for, and I'm finding this, is we're finding pieces of it. I think a lot of that's just what Blayne touched on, its tempo and its plays. Kentucky is attempting 27, almost 28 passes a game. I'll just round off. And teams are throwing 28 times against Kentucky, rushing attempts 37 to 30 given up. So teams are only running, 59 plays on average against Kentucky, and Kentucky is running, 63? Now, I'll find that for Tennessee. I don't know the exact number, but it's a lot higher. And I think that's interesting is who can control tempo. And a lot of that's, I say it's going to come down to third downs. I don't know how often Tennessee even gets to third down, the way that team moves the ball. But Tennessee is giving up 46 passing attempts a game and 32 running attempts. So that is 78 plays? Good grief, that's crazy. And it's got the ball for 23 plus 44, 67 plays on offense. So that's a pretty big difference in snaps. And who controls that? I don't think Kentucky wins the game. I'm not going to say under any circumstance, but whether Kentucky keeps it close depends on whether that play number is close to what Kentucky usually has or what Tennessee has. Because if it gets in Tennessee territory, they're in trouble.
Is it possible, though, that you get into this game and people don't realize that, hey, Kentucky's got Barion Brown, who's really fast, and they've got Tavion Robinson, who's a really good receiver, and they got Will Levis, who a lot of people who make a living selecting quarterbacks to play for their organizations in NFL think he's a top 5 pick, and Tennessee's pass defense is awful. Is it possible that they end up, hurting them a little bit more like that, and that ends up helping the Kentucky run game a little bit? Again, I don't want Tennessee fans thinking – I think Tennessee's going to win this game because I think their offense is very special. And I think ultimately, even though Mark Stoops' defense will end up causing them problems at certain points, I think Tennessee will just outscore Kentucky. But, man, I really think that I think Kentucky is very interesting over here. So, there's different ways I think that Kentucky can go about it.
Well, as I pointed out, Tennessee's pass defense is not quite as bad as people think when you add in sacks. So, look, I'm not saying it's not a concern. I'm just not sure this is the team that can exploit that as much. Like, it's not going to be as good as Will Levis is. That offense is not Alabama with Bryce Young.
Is it better than Florida? Because they gave up 453 pass yards to Florida. And
and that's a valid point.
Anthony Richardson, it's rough over there, and they won by 5 against the Florida team that I think Georgia will beat by 4 touchdowns this weekend. And that was at home at Tennessee, so it's going to be interesting.
I've got to stop getting all my who's doing dad duty. We appreciate it as always, Tyler. Thanks for joining. Go do dad duty. We've all been there.
Literally,
I do wonder what the pass defense numbers look like if you take out Akron and Ball State. I'm sure that changes it, but you can say that for anybody.
UT Martin had 316 passing yards last week. It's not, it's not like they scored, but they give up yards, and that's just style of defense. Maybe maybe they say, okay, we're gonna give you something. Tennessee's been great against the run, so they're saying, we're not gonna let you run the ball. We're gonna make you one dimensional. We're gonna not get beat deep, so they'll probably give up some yards. But at a certain point, is there enough wiggle? Is there enough speed in a guy like Barion Brown to make a guy miss and make a big play?
Yeah.
He's done it on special teams this year. So it's all I'm saying is it's not out of the realm of possibility that you get to the fourth quarter and this is a game. It's not out of the realm of possibility. Do I think Tennessee is going to win? Yes. Do I think Tennessee could end up blowing them out? Yes. But I think if I had to put money on it that mattered to me, I'd put Kentucky to cover.
For what it's worth, just as a reminder, we did all pick Tennessee in our preview video. If you haven't watched that yet, we broke that down for about 20 minutes, went in depth on this game, which we've done another 20 minutes here. I've been the high man on Tennessee all year. I'm all in on Tennessee at this point. Like until somebody beats them, this is where I stand with Tennessee, and I think that again, this is a fascinating game for different reasons, but I just still think that they have been so good to this point, and I just we'll see if Kentucky can match that challenge.